Thanks, Michael. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming to this session. We're in for some fun here. We've got three buyers from some very large companies that are active in this space, and appreciate you attending. What we're going to do is I'm going to introduce the three individuals up here, and then they're going to give a quick background on what they do and where they're at, and there's a bit of a strategy on what they're acquiring these days, and then we're going to go into some Q&A. Up here, I'm going to ask some questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience for you to ask questions as well. So as an introduction, and thank you, Michael, I am a former entrepreneur. I've sold 2 game companies and acquired 1 game company and invested in a number of companies over the last 25 years. I joined Quorum a few years ago to really get active in the game business and help companies, entrepreneurs like you, sell your companies to larger companies. We only represent selling companies, and we're only in the software business, and my specialty is obviously in video games. So without further ado, I want to introduce Kent Wakeford. Kent is EVP and Corporate Development and General Counsel at Kabam. Will O'Brien, who's Senior VP of Corporate Development and Business Development at Big Fish, and Carlo BERTUCCI, if I'm pronouncing that properly, from Amazon and Corporate Development as well. So why don't I have you guys, starting with Kent, introduce yourselves, some of your background and what you've done in the past, and we'll move down.
Great, thanks, Jim. So my name is Kent Wakeford. I run corporate development and strategy for Kabam, a leading free-to-play core gaming company in the West. For those who don't know much about Kabam, we are about 700 employees, offices worldwide. Started out building games on Facebook, focused on core games on that platform, and then migrated to the web, and then to mobile most recently, where we've had tremendous success. We have grown both organically as well as through acquisitions. We've done, over the last 18 months, 5 acquisitions, and we will likely continue at a fairly consistent clip in terms of future acquisitions. We're pretty open about what our strategy is and where we're going. And for Kabam, we are all about free-to-play games and free-to-play core games. So if you think about genres that resonate with core game players, strategy, RTS, action, fighting, racing, etc. Those are the genres that we're looking at as a company. And what we want to do as we continue to grow is bring in the best talent and the best teams that can help us build the next generation games in those genres. So we are actively in discussions with many companies, and hopefully we can find the right teams that have cultural fit and kind of aligned vision of where we want to go, where they want to go and where we want to go, and then invest behind those teams and their products. So anything else, Jim?
No, great introduction. You answered all my questions. I won't be asking you any more.
Okay, good.
No, thank you. Appreciate it. Will?
Thank you. Hi there, my name is Will O'Brien. I run corporate and business development at Big Fish Games. We're also about 700 people worldwide, and we're headquartered in Seattle. We are the leading producer of casual games. We publish, we develop some in-house, but we have a large network of developers around the world, about 600 game companies that we publish on behalf of, to PC, Mac, mobile, and other platforms. We have the leading online marketplace for casual games, where we distribute PC downloads, both paid and free-to-play. And then we're one of the top publishers in mobile, and we have the #1 casino app worldwide with Big Fish Casino. And that's actually a good call out of some of our M&A activity. About less than a year and a half ago, we went after and acquired Self-Aware Games based in Oakland, which was an awesome team, really amazing product, and we brought them under the fold. Kept the team in place and the office in place in Oakland, and then that became our Oakland office. We sent a GM down there to work with them and partner with them, and we've really grown that business now to #1 in the world. So that was a great example of the type of acquisition that we're looking for, something that could expand our business into a new category. In that case, it was casino. It was adjacent to what we're doing in casual, and then help us create and maintain a leadership position.
Thanks, Will. Carlo?
So my name is Carlo Bertucci. I work in the Corp Dev group at Amazon.com, also based in Seattle. In addition to games, I look at a number of cross retail categories, things in payments, operations, logistics. I don't think as a company we publish the number of deals we do a year, but some of the deals we've done in the past that you may have heard of include Zappos, Quidsi, Diapers.com, Goodreads, Kiva Logistics. I think the gaming space exists at Amazon in a couple different ways. Obviously, we sell a lot of games, physically and digitally. There's a strong and growing intersection between gaming and commerce. And there's also a large and engaged developer community in the gaming space that interacts with AWS. So definitely a lot of different angles to look at the gaming space from.
Great. Thanks, Carlo. When did you start getting into the gaming space? When did you start making acquisitions seriously? I mean, I know you've been talking, you've recently been very active.
Yeah, I don't know that we've announced any acquisitions in the gaming space, but it's something that we've been looking at for a number of years in a number of different ways, sort of as the space has evolved. And I think our strategy and our perspectives on M&A and investing also have been pretty dynamic. And I think the sort of the three ways that we're looking at it are kind of the three ways that I mentioned earlier, just a moment ago. Sort of the intersection of media and commerce.
Yeah.
Mobile as it relates to our mobile strategy and device strategy, and also with respect to the developer community.
So for the interest, if you can share, you're interested in that developer community?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
talent specifically, or content, or both?
Yeah, all of the above, as well as just sort of deepening relationships with the community as it relates to some of our products that serve that community.
Okay, good, excellent. Will, where's your focus? What do you like about the developers that you're acquiring? You mentioned the strong team, self-aware. What are you looking for in a team? What are the qualities of the team that turn you on?
We look for. I should caveat to say we're not super acquisitive on the developer side. We acquired a handful over the years because we have such a good relationship as a publisher, and so a lot of companies we can have a great commercial long-term relationship. It's really when there's something new that we want to get into, and there's something very innovative that a developer is doing that we say, hey, let's own this together, and let's perhaps build a platform around it. Casino itself. What was exciting about that team is they had a very novel social-first approach to casino, where a lot of the casino apps out there were really just the same thing as online poker, but you can't cash out. And they had very much about who you're going to play with rather than what are you going to play. And so we liked that. We saw the brilliance of the game design, the technology that they had. It was just a very cohesive team. So they had the passion, they had the innovation, and we saw that we could really scale with them together. So that's kind of, it's got to be something new, I would say, and something that we feel the team can carry on and grow with that.
Yeah, new and innovative.
Yeah.
So at the time when you acquired them, how many other companies were you looking at? Did you do months and months of searching for something that was unique? How many companies did you look at?
Yeah, I looked at every company in the space. I didn't talk to every company, but it was basically, that one comes down to the CEO and I sat down and we said, let's get into social casino, let's go find the most valuable company in the space. And so I literally looked at every single company, where they were on the charts, what their product looked like, and then we talked to a number of them, but not all of them. And that one in particular just jumped out at us as not only one of the most successful at the time, but the most promising. And we do that, we've done that in other extents. When we were looking at building or launching a cloud gaming business, we looked at M&A, we looked at partnership, we looked at different ways to get into the market, and again, just canvas the planet, and then come back and build a thesis and present it to the board and make a decision, move on.
How long did that take?
The casino effort took probably maybe a couple of months to locate and determine who to go after, maybe a month or two to get the deal alignment, and then like 4 months of legal and
Yeah.
You
That's
guys?
pretty quick.
No, actually, it wasn't a banker. It wasn't a banker deal. But yeah, it's pretty quick. It was pretty quick. The great thing, I mean, what was great about that, and I think what would be consistent, I'm sure you guys would share, is if you have the alignment with the buyer and the seller, if they see eye to eye, you can get through any kind of legal snares that go along the way. When you get a hiccup on, oh, what about this issue or that issue, as long as you have that alignment up front, it's really successful.
Yeah. Do you know if other people were bidding on the company at the time?
I've heard that other people were.
Okay. Good. All right. All right, Kent, give us a bit of insight into how you go about acquiring a studio, what the process is. I know that you worked with many of them before you acquire them, or some of them.
We have, and that was raised in the sellers panel about the idea of working with a potential buyer before you go through any type of M&A activity. We've done both. We've acquired companies without spending time with them before, and we've built relationships, collaborating on games with studios, and then ended up acquiring them. The example that Jim's referring to is a company up in Vancouver called Exploding Barrel Games, spun out of EA. Great, highly talented team, had worked together for a long time, which is something we look for as cohesive teams. Core genre, which I mentioned before, they were racing. We started collaborating with them on a project for Fast and Furious mobile game. Really liked working with them. There was aligned culture, aligned vision, and we ended up acquiring the studio and bringing it in-house, and the game has been incredibly successful for us and was #1 racing game on mobile. So it's if that is one process that can definitely work, and then the other is just finding a team, spending the time with them. The diligence takes a little bit longer because you don't know them and you want to get to know the team and the vision and the metrics behind the company. But you could go down either path, and both have been successful for us.
Did Exploding Barrels still in Vancouver?
Exploding Barrels is in Vancouver. They're now our Vancouver studio.
Yeah.
The team, when we acquired them, was about 30-ish people, and we'll be ramping that office to over 80 by the end of the year. So really an investment. When we look at an acquisition, it is looking at teams that we can invest behind the leadership, the management, and a long-term product vision. So really the investment is about growing that studio, multiple games, multiple opportunities with them. And in Vancouver, it's becoming a big development hub for Kabam.
That's some good insight. Thank you on that. What, in terms of red flags, Kent, you've looked at a lot of companies. What sort of red flags pop up in some of these potential acquisitions for the group here? What to avoid, what not to do?
I would definitely say honesty. And I don't mean that in like people are lying when they go through an M&A transaction, but be upfront when you're talking to a company or you're starting to work with a company. Be very open and honest about what your goals, desires, ambitions are, and make sure that there's alignment going into it. Because what we've seen, and we've done a number of acquisitions, is those where everyone is really open about what they want to do, what does success mean to them, what do they want to do individually, where do they want to go. And if there is alignment there and you can all get behind it, then there's a roadmap for you to kind of create success both on an individual level and on a company level. When there's not alignment, and we've seen this a number of times where people are just trying to sell, and they're willing to say anything to get a deal done, you start to uncover that and you realize that it's not going to be a long-term opportunity. So that's one, is really try and be as honest as you can up front about both personal and business objectives. And be willing to really kind of share on both sides. And I would recommend if anyone is talking to Kabam, spend the time to get to know us, understand our culture, understand our vision, understand where we want to go, and really make sure that it aligns with what you want to do as a developer.
Yeah, that's great advice. So you spent a lot of time with Exploding Barrel talking about what it would look like when you acquired them?
Oh, we spent a lot of time on the game because it started around a vision
Yeah.
of a game, expanded into what would multiple games look like, what would their vision of running a Vancouver studio look like, for the key leadership within the studio, what do they want to do? What's success look like? Where do they want to take their careers? What's important for them? and spent a great deal of time at the personal level understanding, and it all seemed to line up really well.
That's great advice. So that relates back to much of the advice we gave in earlier sessions here about understanding what that integration looks like after you sell the company. Those always turn out to be great things and increase value in you as in terms of selling the company and planning a successful integration afterwards. Will, it sounds like you've experienced the same thing and you did a lot of homework in that regard to find the right studio. And did you talk a lot about integration before that acquisition?
We did, and it was also very important to them, which was a great green flag, I guess you could say. It's a very positive sign to see the seller really questioning us and saying, well, what are you guys going to do, and what are you not going to do? Because they had a great thing going. They loved the people they were working with. It was kind of their dream job. So, you know, you're giving up a little bit of that, or a lot of that control when you get acquired. So we like to see, we'd like to see that as well. To the question about red flag, I'd also add just if the seller seems like they're burnt out, that's a real challenge. If it seems like they've been at it for a number of years and they just want to unload and get out, you know that there's no long-term sustainable retention there. So they're not going to be part of the future. So you have to, as a buyer, you have to ask yourself, can I just take the asset and use the asset, and is there value there? Or do I need, if I need the team, then a burnout factor is a risk.
Okay, yeah, that's great advice. And you can't fake that either.
You can't, and I'm not saying fake it if you are
Yeah,
burnt out, but
don't
I
try
think
to fake
to
it.
Ken's point, be honest. Say, you can say, hey, look, I'm at the end of my rope. I'm ready to pivot, but I want to be part of a bigger vision. Here are the assets we bring, and that might hit you on valuation, but it'll be a better outcome.
Yeah, great advice. Carlo, and some of the other deals you've done, in business deals, other M&A, other than the game stuff that you're heading towards, what are the red flags that you've seen in some of your acquisitions or not doing acquisitions?
Yeah, I think a lot of the comments that have been made are accurate. I think, I think if honesty and transparency aren't sort of front and center from day one, there's really no basis for moving forward. And I think that sort of when you're dealing with corp dev groups who meet with at times dozens of companies in a week, it starts to be pretty apparent pretty quickly whether there's going to be a dynamic that works or not. I think also just sort of being realistic and being honest about who you are as a company and who you are as a team is the best thing you can do. Because I think in most cases when you do that, it sets the table nicely for a deal that might have a chance of getting done. In terms of red flags, materials that sort of tend to cherry pick numbers and metrics, not to get too tactical, but if you have a 20-page deck and there's 4 numbers that look really amazing, but like the 96 numbers that you see in every other deck are absent, that's certainly a red flag. Sort of more broadly, turnover in the team, particularly the senior team or even the junior team is a red flag. And sort of leadership teams, particularly the CEO, where there's not cultural alignment and the possibility for the long-term vision of the two companies to be realized. I think at Amazon, first and foremost, we invest in teams and in people. And I think you've seen that over the course of our history with folks like Cole Needham of IMDb, who I think was acquired in 96, 97, still working at Amazon. Tony Hsieh is another good example. Is we really like to invest in people who have created something incredible on their own, and then just get super excited about what they could build and follow through on with Amazon's resources. So,
Did you have you had deals that just didn't integrate well at the end?
yeah, I mean, so I don't know that I'd say they didn't integrate well, but I think sitting in corp dev, the deal side is the easy part of any transaction, and a lot of the real work and a lot of the real value creation is done by the folks on the ground, sort of post close. I think at a high level, people kind of can tend to think about deals or M&A as pieces of a puzzle where you just take one in and plug it in and it fits and it makes a nice picture. In reality, I think it takes a tremendous amount of thought, work, and effort by both the target and the acquirer, and a lot of commitment and sort of thought pre-close as to how things are going to look. And I think you could, there's a tremendous correlation between the amount of thought and energy from both the corp dev team and integration teams, as well as the sort of business unit that would be acquiring or supporting an asset, and the target in terms of planning, pre-close, pre-transaction, and the overall sort of success, however that's quantified, of the deal. Integration is sort of, it's not the sexiest part of a transaction, but a lot of times it's if not the most, well, certainly up there among the top couple of elements of a deal.
Yeah. As far as culture, there's, on the sellers panel, there was a lot of discussion of whether or not they should have relocated to, depending on the head office and all that. Your experience in that, is there a relocation part of that? Is it required, or is it?
Yeah, so given my previous comments on integration, I think our track record and philosophy historically has very much been first, do no harm when it comes to integration and relocation. Again, just looking at some of our past deals, Kiva Systems is a robotics company we acquired last year. They're still operating in the same building in Massachusetts as they were. The Zappos team is still operating out of Las Vegas. The Quidsi team is still operating out of New Jersey. I think we find that if we're going to sort of follow through and acquire a company and a team, we think so highly of them that it just makes sense to let them continue to do what they're doing first and foremost, and then as it makes sense in a minimally disruptive way, sort of plug in and add value and add resources and sort of help boost the initiative, rather than coming in on day one and disrupting what in almost every case is an incredibly high performing special company.
Yeah, that's good advice, and that's a big change from the way it used to be, where these guys are the new buyers of the world and have a huge amount of respect for their acquisitions and the studios that they're acquiring. Many years ago, as you know, and Michael Pohl from Gloops related his history at Electronic Arts, and they had a failure rate of 40% plus in terms of acquisitions. These are good examples of success stories where the respect for you guys as studios and solid teams together work really well. So that's great. That is really great. All right, let's get into, when you're looking at deals. I mean, Will, you were out searching for the best social casino team you could find. Is there cases where you have deals? How many deals do you see every week, every month? Are you bombarded with tons of potential studios deals, or are you out there aggressively searching for the best, or is it a combination?
Yeah, it's a combination. There's quite a lot of activity today, I'd say.
Yeah.
On the sell side, I think just the dynamic of the games market right now, the climate, is one where some companies are in a life stage and they're saying, do I double down for the next couple of years, or do I get out? And so there's quite a lot of activity, which relates back to my burnout factor, smell test, right? But then there's also just times when we, as a company, say part of our strategy is to do X, and we go through the build buy partner analysis, and if it's a buy, then we go after it. Over the years, we did that when we were getting into social games. We bought a studio up in Vancouver, which became our Vancouver office. We were looking to build an MMO, so we bought a company with MMO. So anytime that we're looking at establishing something new, then we're out seeking. But there's a lot of inbound that comes to us where we are a leader in the casino space, and we have other casino companies coming and say, hey, can we team up together and work together? So it happens in both directions, and I think the best thing any of us can do on the table is just be respectful and listen to the person who's reaching out to us, and give them the respect of our time.
Yeah, well, excellent. Kent, any advice there, or what's your experience in terms of seeing these?
I would
activity?
agree with Will that there is a there's a large number of companies right now that are exploring exit scenarios, for good or bad. So there's a kind of a high velocity of deals coming through, kind of inbound deals. For us, in terms of how how we look at spaces, is we'll identify a market that we want to go after, and we will aggressively reach out to companies that we think fit a strategic direction that we want to go. We did that in the case of EBG. We wanted to get into the racing space. It was a great team. We found them, spent time with them and built that relationship and acquired them. We're doing that in other verticals as well. Simultaneously, there are opportunities that come in, and those can take many different forms. It can be an acquisition, it can be a collaboration on a game, it can be a publishing relationship. There's many different ways to start working together if there's joint interest. So there is a lot of volume. There are specific target companies that we're aggressively going after, but we look at everything that comes in the door and try to figure out if there's an opportunity.
Okay. Do you want to answer that, Carlo?
Yeah, I mean, we see a ton of deals. It's unbelievable. It really is.
How do you filter through all of them? How do you, I mean, you know what you're looking for.
Carefully and thoughtfully and respectfully. I think the first thing that I try to think about, at all times is just how hard it is to be an entrepreneur, and how much work goes into getting something off the ground. So even if it's not the right fit or the right time, or you can tell early on, I think just try to be as respectful of the various teams and whatnot as possible is something that I try to focus on. But I think it goes back to the point about sort of being upfront and honest early on, with respect to how you think about your company and what you like out of a deal, and sometimes that involves price, et cetera. Just because it's not productive to hold anything back, or just waste cycles on things that don't have a realistic shot of moving forward. But I would agree that there's a tremendous amount of activity in the market right now.
Yeah, would you say that people that are prepared, they've got their message right, have just a much better chance of getting a second look from you? Or, just the clear, focused message is critical.
Yeah,
it's a lesson.
Absolutely, and it kind of all needs to fit together. I think articulating what you sort of bring in terms of differentiation, and also in terms of core strength and value, and have appropriate expectations for what that would mean in the context of an M&A transaction is super important. I think there are some deals that maybe never got off the ground because people think, let me reach really high on what I'm going to ask for on day one, and it doesn't pencil out, and then maybe they come back a few months later and it's 10% or 5% of that number, and it just gets a little muddy. So I think being sort of honest, again, like I like to think of it as, and this is how I approach it, is approach an M&A scenario or a conversation with the seller, as I do with buyers, as an interaction with other human beings, not with a monolithic entity. And I think if you sort of interact in these processes as you would with another person on a commercial deal or just in daily life, that will set the tone for a healthy resolution quickly, one way or the other.
Yeah, okay.
Can I add one thing to that too? Is a lot of this is also building a relationship. So, as Will mentioned and as I mentioned, there are times where we are focused on specific areas that become a strategic priority for the company. And if we have a relationship with the company, we've been talking to you for a while, even though we haven't done anything, there will be a time where we may focus on exactly what it is you're doing. We know you, we understand your company, we've gotten to know you, we've looked under the hood a little bit, and things can move a lot faster. So I would highly recommend, to the extent that selling at some point is of interest to you, start building the relationships with those companies. Even if there's nothing that happens now, let them know your company, understand who you are, because when a corporate priority becomes very important and everything kind of gets focused on it, you want to be there. You want to be kind of the company that is top of mind when people are thinking about a specific need.
Yeah.
I think that's an outstanding point. And I think corp dev means different things at different companies. It sounds like the way you guys do it at Kabam and the way it's done at Amazon is that it's sort of a wide funneled outward facing lens for the company, and we focus on sort of linking up high performing companies outside of Amazon with our business teams. Again, whether there's an M&A opportunity on day one or not, because I think having that established relationship, a few conversations under your belt, or maybe some experimentation prior to M&A becoming a reality is just invaluable as you get down the road.
So a little change in direction here, and I don't want to throw any curveballs, but this conference is a lot about mobile and online. And what are you thinking? What are your thoughts on the upcoming console releases and how they may fit into your strategy? Especially you, Carlo.
As a gamer, I'm incredibly excited.
Okay.
Because my Xbox 360 has been relegated to the basement of my house, whereas with the new consoles and they've got more cable integration and more of a media focus, can move it up to the main room and interact with it more. I think they're exciting. I'm looking forward to playing with one or two.
Yeah, as a game player. Okay. So am I. What do you think is from a business perspective? How's that going to evolve in terms of what we're going to see in terms of what really matters, which is the content, the software that's going on to these consoles, and how it may integrate with mobile? And obviously, they're going to be online, but there's a lot of business models there too that they can learn from, I think, and some may adopt it faster than others. So, further thoughts on that? You want to?
I think that there's a lot of great strategies from a lot of great companies that are focused on tackling the living room from both hardware and software perspectives. And I think the more avenues there are to deliver content, whether it's gaming content or streaming media, visual media or music, the better for consumers as well as distributors of content and those who want to reach consumers. I think the new consoles will be great examples of that and have tremendous power to increase that flow of content into the living room and tie mobile and, I guess, fixed point hardware together. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. Everybody hopes that we're all going to get everybody back together in the living room and get together and play games and all that. But a lot of consoles are sitting in a dark corner in the basement, and they're being played by online with other players, and it's not a family experience. So we may see content that develops, we may not that develops. It's going to create a better atmosphere for that. Will, you have thoughts on that and what may happen? Other than you've ordered your PS4 and your Xbox.
Not really. No, I mean, from Big Fish perspective, we're very limited on the console side. We put out a couple of Wii titles a few years ago on DS, but we're mainly really focused on mobile, free to play, and then our PC heritage as well. So I think it's an exciting time. And then you've got all the entrants like Ouya and all these others that are looking to disrupt. So I think it's going to be interesting for as developers choose what platform to support, how many. I love disruption because it just creates room for value creation and then subsequently consolidation. But it's just the exciting time to really change the market, and the games market moves so fast. You can't blink.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some really cool innovators that are going to come out of this that are going to discover something that none of us ever thought of that will develop a completely different experience. What do you think, Kent?
So there's a couple things that are interesting to Kabam. One is the kind of opening up of free-to-play within the console space. So you've heard the initiatives from around Xbox as well as the PlayStation kind of enabling free-to-play. I think that true free-to-play is kind of a little bit off. I mean, if you read the VentureBeat article with the CEO of Wargaming talking about some of the challenges, there's a lot of inherent challenges with trying to make free-to-play work within the console space. But think what's happening is you're seeing a step forward of embracing a new business model, which is great. So that's exciting. And I think that what's more exciting to us is the living room as a general concept, and not necessarily that it's going to come from the traditional console manufacturers, but it could come from Google, can come from Apple, could come from the smart TVs. Who knows what Amazon is potentially working on. There are a lot of kind of momentum to bring gaming experiences to the living room, and I think that there will be some winners coming out of that, as you mentioned, and some disruptors, and it could be a very interesting opportunity, probably more like a 2015 opportunity, but an interesting opportunity for people here in this room and at this conference.
Yeah, a lot more opportunity for you guys out there, definitely, in terms of developing content, being innovative, and potentially being an acquisition target for these companies that are looking for innovative developers. What I'd like to do now is, if you guys have anything more to add, please do it now, or I'd like to open it up to the floor for questions. Any words of wisdom? You've already offered. Okay. Okay. Questions? Let's open it up. Who's got questions for these guys? Yes.
Hi, my question has to do with management. Given the focus from all three of you has been integration and the importance of it, do you always make acquisitions with the intention of keeping the existing management, or if and when do you decide to replace it?
Going back to what I talked about earlier about being honest and open about goals and objectives, we have when we look at acquisitions, we're primarily looking at great development teams, including the management of that team, and we want them, and we're, for the most part, investing in that company to bring in great teams, great talent that can build games today as well as in the future. So for us, the management team is very important. We have made one acquisition where the founder was very open and said, I built this game, I love this game, but I don't want to build any more games, and I'm going to step away. And we still went ahead with the acquisition, and the game's been successful, but we knew that going in. There was no surprises, and expectations were set, and we structured the relationship the right way. So for us, we do look at teams, and I do think that it's important to be honest when you go into it, whether your desire is to be in it for the long term or to cash out.
It's a good question. I would, the games market is so dynamic and fast changing that it's often management that makes the difference, or broadly speaking, the team that makes the difference because they can adapt to the market and move quickly. And you're buying a successful, seasoned team that has institutional knowledge. As it relates to seeing a company that's gone through different life stages and then they're moving from A to B to C in the games market. And so losing a significant part or key players of the team is definitely a challenge. But I think there are other examples, maybe not so much when you're buying a game company, but maybe more buying a technology company or other areas that you might say, hey, I don't necessarily need the management, all of the management team. I could just have some representatives of the folks who build what they're building, and then there's a technology asset there. So that might actually be more appropriate for Carlo, given that Amazon has a little more of a diversity of what they look at. But I think there's room for both, and good examples of them.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think in general, evaluating management is a huge part of any deal. But I do think that there can be circumstances where, for example, a team may have tremendous depth in a specific technical area and have developed a piece of differentiated technology that doesn't really require independent management or a CEO, and where the CEO has sort of done his or her part and has sort of taken the company as far as he or she wants to. In which case, again, going back to cultural fit and honesty, if there's an alignment between the internal business folks and technical folks within Amazon, and the technical folks on the target side, as well as sort of highly visible use for the technology that's been created, you know, in that case, you know, you could see it happening. There are no absolutes, but
Okay. Other questions?
Hi. Which stages of companies you are looking currently for? In what stage of their life cycle?
yeah, one of the nice things about the style at Amazon is there's no sort of written code around mandates or constraints in terms of size or life cycle. I think back to the point of sorting through deals, I think we try to take every company asset sort of into consideration independent of those items. It's sort of those factors: size, price, number of employees, you know, funding raised, maturity of product, traction are all variables that go into making a decision. But it's not like anything's hard and fast or there are rules around any of those. We do tiny deals and, you know, much larger deals.
We have a similar approach. We're looking at all sizes, from small teams to, you know, from 10, 15 people to large teams of north of 100. So for us, there's a different way of looking at a potential acquisition, whether it's getting behind a team and a vision maybe they have for a game and aligning behind a vision and funding that, versus a team that may have multiple games in market and you're really looking at those games and evaluating, can you scale those games? So we're open to anywhere in the life cycle, and it's a slightly different approach that we take to the opportunity.
Any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, the industry is pretty much focused on platforms, developing for iOS or Android, and no talk about audiences, right? Mobile audiences. So all of the research says we want it on every platform, et cetera. To what degree you consider, you know, transmedia cross-platform capability in terms of how you look at it, as opposed to that I only work on this segment of platform space?
Yeah, the question is about working on cross-platform versus
Timeless.
one platform, focusing on one platform.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think you want to scale to every platform when you have a successful product to do so. So when we acquired Software Games building Casino, they had, I think they were on Palm OS, and then they moved to iOS. They kind of flirted around with Android a little bit, but they weren't everywhere. But what we saw was the success on iOS and said, we can take that everywhere over time. And so that was it wasn't terribly important for us at that time. In other examples, obviously with our cloud initiative, we were looking at this is going on every platform, and so that was critically important when we were looking at the M&A landscape. There were companies that could work on set-top boxes but not on mobile devices, and so that was critically important. So I think it is subject to the strategy. For a game specifically, unless they've coded themselves into a corner with Objective-C, you have a success, you could put resources behind to bring it anywhere.
Yeah, one of the advantages of this is if you focused on one platform, then your potential acquirer is going to see that scalability. You may not be capable of building that scalability for whatever reason, resources, but in the case of these acquirers, they have that ability and are betting that they can scale up to more platforms, and that produces a lot of value for you.
It's also about what the acquirer brings to the table, right? So the value proposition for the buyer, or for the seller, excuse me, is that Big Fish can bring deep business intelligence, marketing, analytics to scale a property. Can bring IT infrastructure as needed, because we're distributing an incredible amount of downloads and games and games as a service. So a company can go from 0 to 160 very quickly with us, and they don't have to prove that they were able to do that on their own necessarily.
Okay. question?
Yes. I imagine that after selling their company, a lot of the management will lose a lot of their passion. But I was wondering if there was any insight into incentivizing the management to stay for the long run.
So from our perspective, there's two different ways to try and incentivize management. One is to understand what it is that they want to do. And I'll use the exploding barrel example. Here was a team who wanted to make great games, build up their studio in Vancouver, and be able to have multiple kind of top game SKUs running at the same time. And we invested behind that vision, right? So we were kind of aligning the team there to go after the goal and the objective that they want to go after personally. And then, so that's one, is to align, try and make sure that you're aligning kind of long-term objectives with the individual people. And then second is financial. So there are any number of ways to create earnouts, bonus plans, retention bonus, equity incentive. So there's a lot of financial ways to incentivize people, but if you don't ultimately have the alignment in terms of what an individual wants to do with their career and where they want to take it, the financial incentives are not going to be the strongest motivator.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And again, it keeps on going back to sort of vetting out the management team and their vision and what they're looking for out of a deal up front and early. I agree that there's all kinds of tactical structuring things you can do. Hold back transaction proceeds. We tend not to use earnouts, but I think in the gaming space they're actually not uncommon. But again, it really comes down to the point that Kent just made, which is holding back someone's proceeds is not going to be anywhere near as effective as creating a go-forward plan that sort of captures that team's vision. If someone can sit at a desk or an office all day and just vest, and that's not good for anybody. It kind of defeats the purpose of the monetary angle. I think it really is a matter of deal selection and team selection, and making sure that the opportunity exists to execute on a shared vision. And I think management attrition is kind of part of the whole thing. It happens. But I think if you do the things we talked about upfront and early, and pick the right teams, it can be dealt with really productively. That said, you don't expect necessarily everyone to stick around for 15 years. I mean, 3, 4, 5 years, it's natural for anybody in any job to want to try something else. But
Yeah, I guess I'd just add to the startup owner CEO mentality, having been one myself, is around autonomy or control, and around wanting to win and wanting to really build something valuable. And so you can create an environment in which the management of the seller feels that autonomy. Is some burdens are eased, say HR and accounting and finance, by being part of a larger company, but still has that ability to kind of move and do what they want and make decisions. And then wanting to win means they're wanting to win on a bigger stage, where it's a delicate art, but you align their incentives, their financial incentives, with that of the larger company. So if they win, we win. If we win, they win. And then it's all together. If you create a financial package that's just about the subsidiary, it can be gamed. Probably will by some people, and then that results in a bad acquisition.
Yeah, that's great advice. Great question too. How do you keep them? And you got to know how to drive those incentives for entrepreneurs. People who want to win, that want to be challenged, and don't want to necessarily be kept told what to do. You're going to do this, this, and this for the next 3 years until you get your money. That won't work. It never works. Any other questions out there before we wrap up? Another couple of minutes yet?
I'm relatively new in the space. I'm relatively new in the space. I'm actually from the educational side of things. So we actually run our own technology camps, teaching 5-year-olds to code and make their own video games, as we also make our own video games. And we also teach the parents on the weekends. The excitement for this has been astronomical. We started last month and had about 200 kids for our summer camp, and we'll be transitioning out. So I'm trying to find out at what point, since we're very new and we haven't we don't really need money right now. Things are going decently well. At what point do we actually go to the next level to really expand the games and the ebooks that we're developing and really try to ask for either buyout or venture capital? Because so far we're okay, but I think at some point we may need that assistance. I don't know how that would work exactly.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, as long as you have sort of a compelling, impressive, polished product that you're proud of, that you'd be happy to share with, whether it's an investor or an acquirer, I think it's never too early to get the dialogue going. Probably better to have sort of a nice sort of group of folks that you've spoken to about these things before you need the money the next day. But I would say that it makes sense to start that once you've sort of got something that you're really proud of, that you feel represents who you are well. You don't really want to jump the gun and have something kind of half-baked and then say, but I'll check in 3 months and it'll be better. So.
That's an awesome thing you're doing. I think that's great. Teaching kids how to code in video games, it can be awesome for education. So. I think there are alternate routes to a strategic acquirer or investor as well, because any kind of strategic, anybody up here is going to be focused on obviously the financials and sustainability of that business, whereas any kind of social entrepreneurship or anything with a noble vision it has to take a certain amount of additional risk or whatever the appropriate term is. So there are organizations out there like the Gates Foundation and others that will just give you the cushion to scale when they see, like they did with Khan Academy, and they see that kind of success. So I would look outside of just this group and think broadly about it. And with somebody like that, you could go early. With somebody like us, I think you're going to want to be established and showing what that growth path is going to be.
All right, any other questions before we wrap up? No, good. All right, well, thanks guys for attending. Thank you.